nos acompaña desde Francia en esta ocasión, pues está en transición de su trabajo en la Universidad de Sydney a una nueva posición en una universidad francesa, creo que es Brocard, ¿no? Y allí yo lo conocí en la Universidad de Minnesota cuando fui a mis estudios de doctorado. Yo tenía más o menos la misma edad que Gilles, pero ya ven, los europeos tienen la mala costumbre de terminar los doctorados bien rápido, así que para el momento que yo empezaba mis estudios de doctorado ya iba en el segundo postdoctorado. Entonces, de entonces hacia acá, Gilles ha desarrollado muchísimos proyectos en otras 3 o 4 estancias postdoctorales después de eso, en varias partes del mundo. Básicamente lo que él aplica en su análisis de la tectónica, análisis de terrazas, ríos, etc., hace un estudio México, que es el punto triple, difuso entre Guatemala y Chiapas, y bueno, pues le agradezco a Gilles que nos acompañe, le agradezco también el taller de ayer, y bueno, lo dejo con ustedes para que nos hable de su trabajo.
Gracias, Elisa. ¿Me escuchan o no? ¿Bien? Sí. Sí, muchas gracias por invitarme a dar el seminario. Voy a dar la charla en inglés porque si lo hago en español vamos a tardar un montón, porque me falta practicar mi español unas semanas en el campo, porque hace 4 años que no lo uso. Entonces,
no, pero yo
ojalá, o si no lo hago en francés. Bueno, entonces, este trabajo lo realizamos durante mi postdoctorado en Minnesota y luego en Suiza. Y entonces la mayoría del financiamiento proviene de Suiza. Y la mayoría de mis colegas han movido en otros lugares desde ese tiempo. Pero fue el fruto de una colaboración con la Universidad de San Carlos de Guatemala, el Centro Universitario de Cobán. Y entonces yo tengo muchos alumnos y colegas que venían al campo con nosotros, mapeando paleovalles, viendo cuevas, cosas así. Pero lo que voy a presentar hoy es el trabajo únicamente de la tectónica, no el relieve. Eso lo entonces hoy es más de tectónica. The idea of the project was to study how rivers are deformed by strikes and faults. But for this project, I hired another postdoc, Christine, who works in tectonics, and I am a structural geologist at the start too, but I couldn't do everything. So Christine was leading the tectonic part of this project, and when she left the project, I continued the tectonics for the project. So this work is really a group work, as you see. So the study area, as you know, is located south of Mexico. It's in Guatemala, and it's along the plate boundary between North America and the Caribbean plate. And we know that this is away from Puerto Rico to Guatemala, and the opening of the Puerto Basin, which is so large that it became oceanic crust. So we have a spreading center, which is the deepest spreading center in the world here. And owing to the magnetic anomalies, we know that this strike fault here has been accommodating between 1,400 and 1,800 kilometers since the AOC. And this system crops out in Hispaniola, in Puerto Rico a bit, but it is a very diffuse boundary, whereas in Guatemala it is highly focused on a small array of faults, of parallel faults. So we have the chance in Guatemala to observe the entire boundary on land. And when you think about it, so the present day rate of motion between the two plates is about 2 centimeters per year. It has been pretty regular since the AOC. And for a strike slip fault, it is an average velocity. If you go to see the San Andreas, it's about the same. The Grand Sumatra fault is about the same, 2 centimeters per year. The Palupuro fault that moved in October is 4 centimeters per year. So it's in the average of other faults. But what is unique on Earth to this boundary is that if you look at other strike slip faults, they have only accumulated a few tens of kilometers of total displacement, or at most a few hundreds of kilometers. And here we're way above that average. So it's a pretty unique place on Earth. So in Guatemala, the transform fault divides itself into two main faults, the Motagua fault to the south and the Polochi fault to the north. And what has been puzzling for geologists since the 70s is that the transform motion doesn't seem to reach the trench. So when you want to complete the Caribbean plate, it is really hard to trace the faults in the sea. You will see a lot of maps that actually continue the boundary across the margin here. But when you look at seismic profiles across the sea here, you don't see traces of the faults. So because of that, many geological models have been proposed to explain why the system is dying off to the west. So it's interesting, for example, because Motagua, if you think that this fault has been accommodating more than 1,000 kilometers of stratigraphic displacement, how come the fault is dying here inside the volcanic arc? And you could think, oh yes, maybe you just have volcanoes, you're just pouring lava, and so this is hiding the fault. But for example, in this area, the youngest volcanic deposits are 18,000 years old. That means you should see 1,600 meters of stratigraphic displacement, and you don't see any. So clearly the fault dies out here. So the very reason why we don't have a triple junction here is that if you think about it, so that would mean having a configuration like this. So we will have North America pushing the oceanic plate on one side, and the Caribbean plate retreating on the other side. And this is a no-no in geology because generally when you have an oceanic plate which is plunging below overriding plates that are continental, the oceanic plate is more rigid because the overriding plates are underlain by metallized metal, so low viscosity metal. The crust is hot. Your volcanic arcs, you have a high geothermal gradient. So generally, it is the overriding plate which is going to accommodate the tectonics. So for example, if your oceanic plate is moving obliquely with respect to the margin, you are going to have a stratigraphic fault within the continental plate, which is going to accommodate the lateral displacement component of displacement. If you have a slab pull, so if the slab is plunging and pulling the oceanic plate, generally you're not going to tear apart the oceanic plate and open a spreading center. You are going to open a spreading center in the overriding plate and you will have a backup basin. So it's almost invariably, it's always within the overriding plates that you have accommodation. So this explains probably why all of this dies out and doesn't come to the trench. This plate doesn't want to be twisted, and all the twisting is occurring here. So now you have many ways of trying to accommodating this decrease in displacement here. So very early, as soon as the 70s, people realized that we had a lot of active gravens here in the Caribbean plate, and they are stretching the plate quite considerably. So if we stretch this here, we have less to accommodate between North America and the Caribbean plate. And conversely, what you can do in the North American plate is to have shortening. And indeed, we do see shortening in the North American plate. So stretching here, shortening there, it's a good way to stop the displacement across the two faults. Now some others noted that we also have another important fault here. It's the Motagua fault, which runs through the volcanic arc. And we know there are faults like that in the world that run along volcanic arcs, and generally they accommodate the lateral displacement across an oblique subduction zone. But when you have that, you generally have an obliquity of 20% or more. And in this case, it's not the case, they're almost perpendicular. So we cannot explain why we have this stratigraphic fault here. So another way to explain that is to say, okay, this is the conjugate faults to the Polochi-Motagua fault system. And another observation is that when you look at volcanism along the arc, you see that actually you have a peak of magmatic productivity here, just where the two system joins, just where you have the end of the trenching here. So this very high output, we have large calderas, like the Atitlan caldera, which had 3 enormous eruptions during the Quaternary. We have the Atitlan here, which is also huge. So we have a lot of huge inland rocks that are produced by these calderas. And so another way is to consider that as continental accretion. Just imagine you are replacing an oceanic spreading center with just a continental one, and that you are building a huge batholith right below the volcanoes here, replacing the crust. So it could be any combination of all of these. So in a paper that we wrote a few years back, we sort of synthesized all these models to see what is the contribution, the respective contribution of all these processes. So what are the evidences for that? So shortening and stretching, one of the possible mechanisms. Well, it is actually well documented, and if we look in modern times to the seismic moment release, we see that the 2 centimeters per year here, according to this model, and cumulative seismic movements can be accommodated mostly by stretching here in the shortest block and shortening here in Chiapas and transfer unfolding. Now, there is another process we can consider, which is the conjugate faults. So, are they important in this system? So, according to the last GPS data, it's actually the most important process, more so than stretching and shortening, in accommodating the dying out of the displacement along the multi-morphological system. So, these are GPS measurements. Even more recent ones by Beatrice Cosenza just show the same thing. So we go from 2 centimeters per year next to the Caribbean Sea, and we have a decrease to 0 somewhere here in Chiapas. And the Guatemala system accommodates about 40 millimeters per year. Okay, so according to this model, most of the compensation is due to this conjugate fault system. And this is quite interesting because if we look at the differential displacement between the 3 elements that we have here, we see that basically the tectonic sliver, which is between the volcanic arc here and the trench, is not moving with respect to North America. So if we were to define a plate boundary by the fact that we have something moving with respect to the other, then we should consider that the tectonic sliver here belongs to North America and not to the Caribbean plate. So basically that means as the Caribbean plate is leaving, it is leaving behind this tectonic sliver attached to North America. And another way to think of this is to say, okay, that means that this thing here, which is across from Chiapas, which is the coastal plain, and the tectonic sliver down to the trench, used to be part of the Caribbean plate. And due to the departure of this, it has been stitched to North America. So this process, we call it the zipping process. So whereby you have the departing plate here, and the fore-arc sliver is progressively zipped against North America. So we are transferring the block from the Caribbeans to North America. This is the same thing basically in 3D, where you see the plate, which is moving towards the trench. So it started with a certain obliquity back in the days, which may have created this fault in the first place. And then now we have a system where there is very little obliquity, and what is driving the activity of this fault is the departure, the escape of the Caribbean plate. And we have some shortening to the north, some stretching here, and as the departure continues, we have zipping. One of the predictions of these models is that as we are putting these rods here that have a left lateral fabric, we are putting them against this sliver here, where the rods have a right lateral fabric. So do we have a fault in the continuation of the ecologic Motagua system and the Guatemala system, just ahead of the tectonic sliver? Yes, we do. The Tonana fault, which is bounding the Sierra Madre in Chiapas. And when you look at this fault in detail, what is puzzling is that when you look at the fabrics on either side, it says the contrary. Left lateral on one side and right lateral on the other side. So it fits quite well with this model. Now there is another process that we wanted to document, which is the transfer of terrains across the border. Because another way to fill this gap is to try to fill it with blocks coming from around and filling the space left by the departure of the plate. So to do so, we are going to look at, we're going to look at this, which is the tectonic sliver between the Polochic fault and the Motagua fault. So today the GPS says that less than 5 millimeters per year of displacement are occurring on the geologic fault. And most of the displacement is on the Motagua. Right now, we cannot resolve actually exactly how much is happening on one fault or the other. Actually, we could say there is zero happening on the geologic fault, possibly. Now, as I will show you later, geology says that we do have some displacements on the geologic fault. And I told you that we had a huge amount of displacement on the Motagua fault. What do we know about displacements on geology? So this is actually very well constrained. This is a zoom in on the geologic fault, which passes here. And the fault cuts through a series of faults that are striking northwest southeast here, which are here composed mostly of Cretaceous platform limestones. And we have anticlines exposing the bedrock, like here. This is an anticline of Permian rocks. And this anticline here, we find it there. And in the back of it here, we have a nap of fossilites, which was placed in the Upper Cretaceous on top of the limestones. And you find these fossilites here in two synclines, and you find them there. And you can continue on and on. So actually, owing to that, we have a very well constrained displacement on the fault of 125 kilometers. And this was discovered by Brocard and published in 1978. Now, if we look at the river drainage, we see that the rivers that are crossing the geologic faults are tectonically offset. The most beautiful examples is the Rio Chisoi here, which is a nice tectonic deflection here of 25 kilometers. We have the 40 kilometers long here on Rio Pico. So we do observe that the river drainage has been displaced. But this is much less than the total offset. So this means that the drainage has reorganized sometime in the past, and that the total offset has been reduced. Okay, so it was the topic of my talk yesterday about geomorphology. It's how drainage is reorganized. But today you just need to know that sometime in the past the drainage reorganized, and this has been well documented. So we know that in the past we had in yellow that used to flow from the orange drainage divide here down to the geologic fault in many places. And all these former rivers that are crossing the fault, and we find some of them to the north, they left some traces in the landscape. So this is the view looking east along this corridor here, along the tectonic deflection of the Rio Chisoi. Just to show you that it's quite impressive in the landscape. So this is 25 kilometers long, and the fault runs more or less on the floor of the valley. On this slide. So this is the geologic fault. These are the four streams, and all what you see here in blue, in dark blue, are the paleo valley remnants that we can find through this landscape. And these paleo valleys look like that in the landscape. So here is one where you can see serpentinites here, limestone there, and this is the unconformity between the paleo valley. So the paleo valley is occupying this here. This is recent Tamis. But this is a 7 million years old paleo valley here with some England whites in it. So this is what they look like when you map them. So you see them cutting through the Eocene folds here and there. And you can track the remnants, connect them, study their infill, do class provenance studies, all kinds of studies. And so using that, we'll be able to work out their stratigraphy and age. So this is what they look like. So we have successions of river deposits and igname whites. And so we can work out when these valleys were abandoned. And now these are cross sections across some of the valleys, but we can look at their longitudinal section. And we are going to look at two of these, one located here and one located there. And this is what we observe. So we go from the branch drainage divide to the south. You go through the Chisoi Basin. Here is one of the paleo valleys. Here is the geologic fault. And this is the same, just 25 kilometers apart. And what we see is that these paleo valleys have been deformed quite considerably. They were flowing to the north. So this was flowing to the north. And as you can see, this has been backtilted by about a kilometer over the length of the river. And the age of the valley is 7.5 millimeters. This one has been deformed too with some, so basically it is reactivating former folds, but also creating new structures. And this is a new thrust cutting through the river deposits in one of these paleo valleys, through the river deposits and the overlying inland part. So what it says is that the eastern part of this tectonic sliver. In particular, we have some other paleo valleys, like the Carbon paleo valley here, which starts here, which used to flow from the range drainage divide here, which has left fluvial deposits here in yellow that documents that this river that today has its head here used to start over here. And I did the mapping and dating of the deposits in this paleo valley. And this allowed me to constrain the age at which this valley was abandoned. And so all of that occurs through different river captures since 1 million years ago. And you can see that the valley is actually tectonically offset 3 times, left laterally offset here. But these faults also have a vertical component of displacement. This is what they look like in the field. So this is the Graben de Gola, and there is no vertical exaggeration here. It really looks like that. And this is some electrical tomography that we did here to see if the fault was active today. It is not actually, but it's very recent. So we have another fault on the other side which is active. And these faults are represented here on this compressed cross-section of the valley. So they appear vertical here because you wouldn't see the dip at that scale due to the vertical exaggeration. But so what they show is that these faults that have a normal component and a structural component are responsible for basically the deposition of sediments on subsiding blocks and incision on rising blocks. And having a date for these deposits, we can show that this period of this reorganization was triggered by transtensional tectonics. So we see that between the 2 faults, we have the first period of reorganization of the drainage, which is due to contractional uplift, and then a period of reorganization which is due to transtensional uplift. In the meantime, these are recent lacustrine sediments that I discovered north of the fault, which we dated to the transition from the Pliocene to the Quaternary. And in these recent deposits, we find pure stratigraphic displacement. This is north of the Colochic fault. So we see that this transtension did not propagate north of the Colochic fault. So if we sum up these observations, this is what we have. In the late Miocene, 8 million years ago, this is the tectonic sliver, this is the Colochic fault, and this is the Motagua fault, and this is the Caribbean domain. And we have contraction in this tectonic sliver. So at the time, it is behaving in the same way as North America, which is under contraction, as we have seen. And while you already have transtension occurring in the Caribbean plate. And then, since the Plio-Quaternary, we have propagation of transtension in the tectonic sliver here, which is exactly the tectonic regime that we observe to the south. So for us, this is evidence that this tectonic sliver is being transferred to the Caribbean plate. So it has been detached. Sometime in the Miocene, it has been moving 150 kilometers, and we think that in the future, the totality of the displacement here will be transferred to the Colochic fault. And this will be part of the Caribbean plate. And interestingly, this is a model that can be disputed, but which was proposed by Auditorio in 2008. He defined what he called the southern Mexico block, whether this exists or not, because there are some disputes on this boundary here. But there was this idea that basically here, this block is basically sucked in the wake of the Caribbean plate and replacing the Caribbean plate. So the goal is to preserve the straightness of the Middle American Trench and through deformation in the overriding plate to occupy the space left here by the departure of the Caribbean plate. So the driving force in this model is topography. He says, okay, this is higher than that, and so this is progressively collapsing towards the south. But so we propose that actually it might be the same process, which is transferring the tectonic sliver here, which is affecting the inside of southern Mexico. But more convincingly to me, if we look back in the past, we have the Chartist block here. The Chartist block, as you must know, many people believe that it was originally coming from across Chiapas here, and that it has been moving since the Evolution or early Evolution from here into its modern position there, because we have Brandvillian schists here that would fit Brandvillian depths there. Actually, if we look in detail to the Chartist block, it is made of an assembly of small slices. And so each one of these slices could be previous tectonic slivers here that were picked up in the back of the Caribbean plate as the plate was moving east. So that's the idea of the block transfer. This is a close-up of the northern part of the Chartist block. There is the Las Vegas terrain, for example, which is really different from the main Chartist block, if we can say that there is a main Chartist block, and which is separated from the main Chartist block by the Crocodile fault here. So one of the consequences of this was studied by my student Thibault, who did some low temperature thermochronology across the plate boundary. And this is a map of the geothermal heat flow across Central America and North America in this region. And what we see that we have a cold magma block, which is cold because it has been a passive margin which was then covered by objective material. And the Chartist block is an area which has a high heat flow. And if we think that the Chartist block is coming from here, that means that during its transfer, it has always been in a trench position just above the trench. So always in a hot area. So we studied the geothermal gradients in the Sierra de las Minas here to the north and in the Chartist block to the south. But before I present you the results, one important element of the reasoning is the fact that in the middle Miocene we have very little relief in this area. It was basically flat, more or less at sea level. And in the north we find the fragments of this paleosurface high in the mountains here, preserved, which is from flat tops. This is the flat top of the Sierra de las Minas. And below the paleosurface we have deep weathering, deep tropical weathering. We have a very thick saprolite here, which is more than 100 meters thick. Where we have it here on the Sierra de Santa Cruz. That's where we find nickel, garnierite, in a very highly evolved soils of Miocene age. And here we have it on top of the Cretaceous limestones in this area. And we do find also the same surface to the south, which is more fragmented due to the presence of the grabens. So this is the saprolite, this is the quartz veins that we find in the saprolite. And so this is a projection, cross-sections through the Motagua Valley at different places that show the location of this paleosurface on either side. And you see that they are basically about the same elevation on either side. And we did some volcanic rocks on top of this side, so we know that it formed between it was abandoned and incised between 12 and 14 million years ago. And to the south, it was extensively covered by ignimbrites 14 million years ago. So it's really the same surface on either side. Now, if we look at the ages, this is a compilation of former urban ages of apatite fission tracts here. And these are our own data on helium and zircons. And what we see is that the age of cooling are much older on one side than the other, which we see very well here also with apatite fission tracts. So we see that the Maya block has older ages than the Chartist block. So one usual way to interpret this is to say, well, that means these mountains are uplifting faster. And so that's why we have younger ages here. But we know from the paleosurface of same age that this is not the case. This is not uplifting faster. This is simply hotter, and this is colder, which is quite different. So the consequence of that is that if you look at the helium and zircons, between a profile in the north here and a profile in the south there, is that two profiles at the same elevation at different ages. But they document also the same rate of exhumation. But the ages are offset, because one is hotter than the other. If we now look at the helium and apatite, which is more sensitive to near-surface processes, this is a profile to the north, from the top of the range to the base. And instead of having a straight line like this, the apatite ages are actually coming this way. And Thibault did the modeling of that. And basically what it says is that if you imagine that you have a cold block to the north, and you keep having hot terrain passing to the south, just like a hot iron passing along the cold block, you are going to transfer some of the heat of this block into that block. And if you look at the distribution of apatite ages at the ground surface at 0 million year, which is here, well, you find that the shortest block has very young ages, and you have old ages on the other side. So this banana-shaped thing here is symptomatic of heat transfer from the shortest block to the Maya block on the other side. Okay. And probably you can do so because you have such a large amount of displacement, and you have a protracted period of tens of millions of years of hot material passing in front of cold material on the other side. Okay, so that was a general presentation of the area, and by working with my colleagues there, initially we didn't want to go too much into the neotectonics, but it turns out that we ended up doing a lot of neotectonics. One of the interesting things about the Motagua-Polochic system is that when we look at past earthquakes, we had a very large earthquake in 1976. It was a magnitude 7.6. It started here. It propagated at super shear velocities to the west, and it caused 23,000 casualties. And millions of houses were destroyed. But interestingly, before this earthquake, we are not aware of any earthquakes historically on the Motagua Fault, which is and we have one in the 9th century here that destroyed the city of Quirigua. And that's the only evidence of another large earthquake in the past on the Motagua Fault. Nothing in between. Which is very strange, because considering the rate of displacement, we should expect maybe 10 large earthquakes on the fault. However, in the meantime, the Polochic Fault, which is supposed to be the tiny fault in the system, has a much richer record of earthquakes. So the study of historical seismicity by White in the 80s concluded that we had a very large earthquake in 1815, which affected large parts of Chiapas and large parts of the Polochic Fault. And it is thought to have nucleated here on the Polochic Fault and propagated somewhere, maybe on the Concordia Fault in Chiapas. And this was a massive one, with possible magnitudes of 8. So something really massive. And then we could have two earlier earthquakes. One in, I think it's 1785 here, on the eastern part of the fault. And another one maybe soon after the arrival of the Incan monks here, around 1530. But it is fully constrained. The issue with these reconstructions is that, for example, for this one, it relies on many testimonies and reports from the West, but very few on this part. So you can actually change which fault has been moving very easily. So actually, we have no proof when we started the study that the fault was even active. So of course we thought it was active because it looks active, but this is not a scientific proof. So we went to study this area specifically because there was a high potential for observing recent ruptures. So we are now going to focus on this area. So here is the tectonic deflection of Rio Chicoy. This is the active trace of the geologic fault with some restraining bands here and there, releasing and restraining bands, some other strands of the faults, splaying away from the main one. And we did some electrical resistive tomography at various places, and we opened trenches here and here. So I'm going to start showing the results from the area of Usmantan. Yeah. So if we look at the cross sections from north to south for this area, what we see is that we have, this is the Paleo Valley that I was showing earlier with the deformation. So we know that we have contractional deformation and a positive flower structure at the largest scale. But then as we get closer to the geologic faults, we have more recent quaternary faults that are downfaulting the center of the valley. And when we go to the very core of the geologic faults, we have actually contraction again. So these systems are very complex. So this is the city of Usmantan, which is a small city which was destroyed at 70% by an earthquake in 1985. And the earthquake was not triggered on the geologic fault, which passes nearby, but on the Placa fault, which is slightly to the north. And actually, so this city is moving towards us, and this is the tectonic sliver between the geologic faults and the Motagua fault. So it is still a very dangerous place, as you can see, because the reason why the city is here, it's a bit like Mexico, it's flat. But the shear wave velocity with some seismic refraction is 200 meters per second. So it's very low, that means we are going to have a lot of low frequencies, soil liquefaction, and everything you like, if we have a big earthquake on the geologic fault. And plus when we noticed that, this was quite preoccupying, so the mayor, who happens to be an engineer, was very helpful. And so he blocked the streets for us, and we did some tomography for the streets in the center. But because it was concrete, we had to drill through the concrete to put the electrodes. So it was pretty intensive geophysics. But it paid because basically we imaged this fault here below the Camis field and the columbium that are below the city. And these two faults define a slice ridge which is stuck in between the two, which is lifting up. So here are the geophysical results, which are really nice, because we can see that below the soft soils in the city, so this is the urban center, it's all built concrete. And just below we have this high conductivity zone. And then Barbara Suski, the geophysicist who worked with me, she did some forward modeling. So she started with blocks like this, with different resistivities. And she was able to obtain what we observed from the tomography here, a perfect match, which implies that we have an upward flow of highly mineralized waters. And to verify that the model was correct, I went to the city and I sampled wells in the houses. And what we found is that the major ions, if you plot the ion content and the electrical conductivity as a function of the distance to the fault, so from 0 to 5 kilometers here, you see that you have a steady decrease in the mineralization of the water. So it's the surface trace of this plume of mineralized water going through the fault zone. So this is where this work was done. This is the cracks left by the earthquake of 1985. And then I took the opportunity that they were building a school here, right on top of the fault, to open a trench and see what the fault was exactly passing. So we see in this area that we have sheared meanders, like that. And we have the floodplain here, which has risen north of the main strand of the fault. But the question was, what does it look like? So we opened a trench next to the school, and these are the results from the trench. The trench is 45 meters long, and it goes from the core of the fault here down to the floodplain layers here. And what it shows is that we have a positive flower structure there. This is 84,000 years old pumice, which has been tinted. Here we have sediments that were deposited horizontally on top, which have been tilted. And then we have fluvial deposits that are less and less tilted with younger ages. So we do see that if we analyze it finely, we see that we have 4 deformation events between 18 and 13,000 years ago. So we are very happy with these results because clearly that means the geologic fault is active. Nailed it. Now, next to this, I was interested in getting the very last earthquakes on the fault. So for that, we have planned trenches here, 2 open trenches here. And the work started nicely, but then we had to stop everything because we almost got lynched by the people. Because even if you worked out the social aspects of it, there was a lot of backtalking and people saying we were undercover for mining companies and hydroelectrical companies. So in the end, we had to give up. So it's a pity because it's probably the best site to see the very last earthquakes on the fault. But we relocated to this area here, where we had been doing some geophysics back in 2008 and the dating of the Naledro time. But it was really hard to dig a trench here because it's very far from the closest road. So it was really hard to bring a back route to the site and dig there. Just to do the geophysics, we had 15 students carrying the cables for 5 kilometers. But we were helped by a big mountain collapse in 2009, which dammed the main river. And this created so many problems for the local hydroelectric dams that they actually opened the road for us to the site, as you are going to see. So this is the site back in the days, not a very long time ago. But it is very interesting because we have, you can see we have a dry valley which is left laterally offset by the geologic fault here. And then we have a debris flow fan here, which is also slightly offset. So we decided to date the fan first. So we sampled some limestone blocks, very large blocks at the surface of the fan. And we used chlorine-36 cosmogenic dating to date these blocks. And we found that they have been deposited in several episodes of debris flows between 2,000 years ago and 10,000 years ago. Yeah, so that's the sampling of the blocks. And then we did some electrical imaging here in the Caribe Valley, but we were wondering if we could open a trench someday. And then came the big collapse, mountain collapse here. And following the collapse, we got a lot of debris flows evacuating the avalanche deposits. And the avalanche deposits came here and they dammed the river. And they threatened hydroelectrical projects farther upriver. So the National Institute of Electricity decided to open a trench here, which nicely exposed what we wanted to see. So that was our little revenge. We eventually imaged the fault. So in this area, we have 2 strands of the fault. The northern one, fault B, does not displace the recent alluvium. So it is not currently active. But it is well exposed. And this is a trench where it is exposed. And what you see here is that at the base, we have old alluviums of the Chickasaw River, which is the big river here in the back. So this is out here. So these are alluviums that were in place before the rise of this slice ridge here, because they are from there. And they have been buried under about 120 meters of pumice, 84,000 years ago, coming from very far, from 100 kilometers away, on the Atitlan caldera. And we see that in these old alluviums, we have very nicely marked spherical lines, very large ones, that are perfectly horizontal. Then we have a second generation, which is superposed to this first one here, which is slightly oblique. And then in the pumice, we have one generation which is even more oblique than these two. So we see that over time, this strand of the fault has been more and more normal, and less striking. But the southern one is the currently active one. And here is what it looks in the trench. So it is putting the pumice against Permian limestones and the former alluvium of the Chickasaw River, which means that not only it is going to the back here, but it is lifting up at the same time. So it is the ridge you can see here. And these are our trenches. So this was before the opening of the canal trench, which is there in the back. And at this site here, site A, we see that the fault is putting against each other a channel fill and paleosols. And by dating the floodplain, we see that the floodplain has been aggrading at about 1 millimeter per year. So these soils are actually quite recent. And this site is the most interesting because we have historic soils, very recent soils here, that are put against the fault. So we have evidence that since the 18th century, the fault has been displacing, moving sufficiently to put a river channel against the soils that are nearby in the floodplain. So we have evidence for recent displacement on the fault. Now the question is, what is the age of this displacement specifically? So to address this, I turn to a lake which is located nearby. So I'm going to show you a map. So the lake is here, and the trench is there. So there are only a very few kilometers between the two sites. So if we have metric displacements here, we should see the traces of the earthquakes in the sediment of the lake. So I use this lake to check for paleo earthquakes. So the first thing you do in that case is that you find this beautiful lake. It's beautiful, but it smells bad because there is no sewage system for the city, so everything ends up here. And we did first the bathymetry of the lake, wondering, okay, what is this lake? What is the origin of this lake? And so this is the bathymetry of the lake. So it is actually made of separate circular basins like that, which are dolines that form on top of a body of gypsum, which is buried at depth. So that is very interesting because when you have separate basins like that, and you have a landslide in the lake, say you have a landslide here. If it is a random landslide that occurs in the lake, you are going to have slump deposits and turbidites that are going to be deposited in this basin. But you are not going to find them here or here. But if now you have an earthquake, you are likely to shake the entire lake and to have landslides occurring everywhere in the lake. So you should have deposits of the same age here and here and here. So it's a good way to make sure that what you observe is actually related to an earthquake and not a random landslide. So yes, so we went with this coring equipment. We cored the Caca del Pueblo, and after passing through it, we ended up into nice sediments, which was older. And we got actually beautiful sediments. So this is what you see. So to check so these sediments have two great qualities. First of all, they are nicely laminated like that. And by doing the lead 2010 chronology of this and doing also the cesium 137, we were able to show that these sediments are recent and that the laminations are yearly. So we have two bars. Okay, each time you see a black layer, you have 1 year between each layer. So owing to that, we could show that we have a few turbidites that interrupt this regular alternation of dark and light layers. So the dark layer is the summer layer. It is mostly organic. And the light layer is the winter layer when you get some clay that goes into the lake. And this light colored turbidite is mostly made of clay. It has a little bit of magnetite also, which is the reworking of the pumice. So it is typically what is produced during a flood. So this is a flood layer. But this dark turbidite here, it is mostly composed of organic matter and of calcite, which was crystallized in the lake, on the sides of the lake. So on the sides you have sediments that are rich in carbonates and carbon produced by the plants. And during the earthquake, it is remobilized, it falls to the floor of the lake, and it produces these dark layers. And the age of this layer is 1976, so it was clearly produced by the big earthquake on the Motagua Fault, 50 kilometers to the south. And we know that the intensity was a shaking intensity of 6 near the lake. And when you look at a database in the world of seismites, you see that threshold intensity of 6 to 7 is what triggers landslide index in general. Now we move to the central basin here. When we arrived in 1976, we have a huge turbidite, and below the turbidite it is all slabs. So all these slabs are more than 2 meters thick, and they were produced during the 1976 earthquake. So this lake is really nice because we can differentiate just on the chemical composition a flood layer from a seismic layer, which is not always easy. And also we can show that it behaves like a good lake. When you reach an intensity of 6, you get turbidites and swamps. So after calibrating that on the 20th century, we looked at the older record. When were the earthquakes before? So this is a longer core, going back to the 9th century here. And the orange layers are the seismites, so the turbidites produced by the earthquakes. So what you see that we have 1976, and oddly, absolutely nothing before that one here. And these are the radiocarbon dates, okay, along this core. And then we have more, and then we have a swarm of earthquakes here. And here we have a hash layer from the Fuego volcano. So if we put that in an age model, so age according to depth, and we look at the age of these layers according to the radiocarbon, according to valve counting, we can establish the age of these layers here. So we project that, and we infer the age here. And what is really interesting is that we see that we had no earthquake before after the pre-Columbian times. Everything is pre-Columbian in age. And when we look at the spacing of the quakes, we have the fewest quakes here, and then we have an earthquake swarm there, which coincidentally is the age of the Maya collapse. And we know from archaeology that cities were damaged at the time by earthquakes, when we look at several of the Maya cities close to the sites. So this is quite interesting because, when you think of the Maya collapse, they always say, it's a drought in the Petén area, But when you're in Guatemala, it's fucking wet. When you're in mountains, there is water everywhere. You can have the drought you want, you will always have water. So it cannot explain why the cities like Rihua or Copan or some other cities that were of the classical period here in the mountains have collapsed. So we know that it's a multifactorial thing. You have to consider that these cities we know are exchanging a lot with the cities of Chiapas and the Petén. So yes, they lost some economical links, so life was harder. But when on top of that you take 4 earthquakes in your face in less than a century, it's difficult. Like it happened to the city of Guatemala in the 18th century. They got 1 earthquake, they rebuilt. They got a 2nd earthquake, they rebuilt. They got a 3rd earthquake, and it's, okay, that's enough, we just leave. And so they displaced Guatemala-Ciudad. So, this could have been helpful, explaining the demise of the large cities, classic cities. Then, another interesting aspect of this chronology is that you might remember that 5 kilometers from the lake, you have a trench that shows us that during this time, the Polochic fault has been moving. We have seen that we have these panelus holes, this nice flood sequence, which has been put into contact with the river channel. So we have several meters of displacement happening during that time, which is here. That's the seismic risk, which was the main goal of the study, because we need much longer records to establish that. And also, so I wanted to stress the fact that there is surface creep. I wanted to tell also that following the earthquake on the Motagua fault, we had on average 2 meters of slip at the time of the earthquake, and we had 1 meter of after slip, because most of the fault is located along the serpentinite belt. So one of the reasons probably for the lack of earthquakes along the Motagua is that a large part of the seismic moment would be accommodated slowly by creep on the Motagua fault. And the same is true of the Polochic fault. The difference is that the Polochic fault is not creeping into serpentinite, but it's putting into contact a series of Cretaceous limestones with a lot of evaporites intercalated, salts and gypsum. And so it could be the sort of gypsum that explains the creep, at least in the first kilometers below the surface. So that's about it.
¿Tiene algunas preguntas?
En español, ¿vale?